The bathroom door creaked open, and I froze, my breath catching like a hook in my throat. Ethan, my stepson, sat in the tub, his bare shoulders glistening under the dim light, water rippling around him. He didn't see me at first, but the words he whispered to himself sliced through the steam. I can't keep hiding who I am. I should have backed away. Any decent stepfather would have shut the door, pretended he'd never been there. But something in Ethan's voice, raw, trembling, like a confession to a god he wasn't sure existed, rooted me to the spot. We weren't close, not really. I'd married his mother, Claire, 3 years ago, stepping into a family already fractured by loss and time. Ethan was 19, a quiet kid with dark eyes that seemed to carry the weight of secrets I'd never been privy to. He'd always kept me at arm's length, polite but distant, like a tenant in his own home. I figured it was just teenage rebellion or resentment toward the man who wasn't his real dad. But this was different. The bathroom was small, a relic of our modest Seattle home, with its chipped tiles and clawfoot tub that Claire insisted gave the place character. Steam curled in the air, softening the edges of everything, like a dream you're not sure you're supposed to be in. Ethan's hands moved slowly, scrubbing his arms with a washcloth, each motion deliberate, almost ritualistic. I realized I was staring, my heart pounding with the guilt of intrusion, but I couldn't move. Not yet. Marcus. His voice cracked, sharp with panic, as he finally noticed me. His hands stilled, the washcloth sinking into the water. His eyes, wide and searching, locked onto mine, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't before. Fear, yes, but also a desperate need to be seen. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice too loud in the quiet. "I didn't mean to. I was just checking if you were okay. I heard something. A lie, clumsy and thin. I hadn't heard anything until those whispered words." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he pulled his knees to his chest, the water sloshing softly. The silence stretched, heavy, unbearable. I should have left. I should have turned and walked out, given him his space. But then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper, each word trembling like it might shatter. "I'm gay, Marcus. I've been trying to tell you and Mom for months, but I didn't know how." His eyes dropped to the water, as if he couldn't bear to see my reaction. "I'm scared. Scared you'll hate me. Scared Mom will look at me like I'm broken." The air left my lungs. I didn't know what I'd expected. Maybe an apology for some teenage misdemeanor, maybe a confession about skipping college classes. But this was a wound laid bare, a truth he'd been carrying alone, and it hit me like a freight train. I thought of Claire, her devout faith, her quiet disapproval of anything that strayed from her rigid worldview. I thought of Ethan, navigating that judgment in silence, and my chest ached. "I don't hate you," I said, the words spilling out before I could think them through. "Ethan, I could never hate you." I took a step closer, the floor creaking under my weight. His head snapped up, his expression caught between hope and disbelief. "You don't get it," he said, his voice rising, sharp with pain. "You don't know what it's like to feel like you're wrong, like you're a mistake. Every day, I wake up and I'm lying to everyone. To Mom, to you, to my friends. I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm so fucking tired." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't prepared for this. Not for the rawness of his confession, not for the way it made me feel like I'd failed him somehow. I'd spent 3 years trying to be a good stepfather, keeping the peace, fixing leaky faucets, making small talk over dinner. But I'd missed this. I'd missed him. "Ethan," I said, crouching by the tub, my knees pressing into the cold tile. "You're not a mistake. You're not wrong. You're you. And that's enough." The words felt inadequate, like trying to patch a sinking ship with tape, but they were all I had. He looked at me, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, and for the first time, I saw him. Not the sullen teenager who dodged my questions, but a young man fighting a battle I couldn't fully understand. "You really mean that?" he asked, his voice small, like a child's. "I do," I said, and I meant it. I didn't know how Claire would react, or how we'd navigate the storm that was coming, but in that moment, I knew I'd fight for him. For this kid who wasn't mine by blood, but was mine in every way that mattered. He nodded, a small, shaky movement, and then he looked away, his fingers tracing the edge of the tub. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said. "I was going to tell you both at dinner tomorrow. I've been practicing what to say for weeks." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You don't have to do it alone," I said. "We'll figure it out. Together." He didn't say anything else, but the silence felt different now. Not heavy, but shared, like a bridge we were both standing on. I stood, my knees aching from the tile, and grabbed a towel from the rack. "I'll give you some privacy," I said, tossing it onto the chair by the tub. "But I'm here, okay? Whenever you need me." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. "Marcus? Thanks for staying." I didn't turn back, afraid he'd see the tears prickling my own eyes. "Always," I said, and I meant it. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of burnt toast and Claire's lavender tea, a combination that always felt like home, but now carried an undercurrent of tension. I stood at the counter, slicing apples for breakfast, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind replayed Ethan's confession. His words echoed like a heartbeat. "I'm gay. I'm scared." I didn't know how to tell Claire, or if I even should. It wasn't my truth to share, but the weight of it pressed against my chest, demanding release. Claire bustled in, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her smile as warm as ever. She was a woman of routine. Church on Sundays, book club on Wednesdays, and a fierce love for her son that sometimes felt like a wall between us. "Morning, Marcus," she said, kissing my cheek as she reached for her mug. "Ethan up yet?" "Not yet," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I glanced at the stairs, half expecting him to appear, but the house was quiet. Too quiet. I wondered if he was still in his room, rehearsing the words he'd planned for dinner, or if he was regretting what he'd told me. Claire sat at the table, flipping through a magazine, oblivious to the shift in the air. "He's been so distant lately," she said, her tone light but tinged with worry. "I keep thinking it's just college stress, but I don't know. He's not himself." I swallowed hard, the knife pausing mid-slice. "He's got a lot on his mind," I said carefully. "Maybe we should give him some space to figure things out." She looked at me, her brow furrowing. "You know something, don't you?" Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, like she could sense the secret I was carrying. Claire had a way of reading people, a skill honed from years of teaching high school English, but I wasn't ready to open that door. Not yet. "Just let him come to us," I said, setting the knife down. "He's working through some stuff." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on me, searching. I turned back to the apples, my hands trembling slightly. I hated keeping things from her, but Ethan's trust felt fragile, like a thread I couldn't afford to snap. By noon, Ethan emerged, his hair mussed, his expression guarded. He grabbed a banana from the counter and mumbled a greeting, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to ask if he was okay, if he'd slept, if he still planned to tell Claire tonight, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I offered a small smile, hoping it conveyed what I couldn't say. "I've got your back." The day passed in a blur of errands and small talk, each moment heavy with anticipation. By evening, we were seated around the dining table, a spread of roast chicken and mashed potatoes before us. Claire chatted about her book club's latest pick, oblivious to the tension coiling between Ethan and me. He picked at his food, his fork tracing patterns in the potatoes, his silence louder than any words. Finally, he set his fork down, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Mom, Marcus," he said, his voice steady but tight, like a wire-pulled taut. "I need to tell you something." Claire's smile faltered, her fork pausing midair. "What is it, honey?" she asked, her tone gentle but laced with unease. Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes flicking to me for a split second, seeking strength. I nodded, barely perceptible, and he turned back to his mother. "I'm gay," he said, the words rushing out like water breaking a dam. "I've known for a while, and I've been scared to tell you because I didn't know if you'd still love me." The room went still. Claire's fork clattered to her plate, her face pale. I reached for her hand under the table, but she pulled away, her eyes fixed on Ethan. "What?" she whispered, as if she hadn't heard him right. "I'm gay, Mom," he repeated, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I'm still me. I'm still your son." Claire's lips parted, but no words came. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. I wanted to say something, to fill the void, but this was their moment, their reckoning. I was just a witness, caught in the crossfire of their love and fear. "Ethan," Claire finally said, her voice trembling. "I don't understand. How long have you known? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was scared," he said, his eyes glistening. "I heard you talk about the church, about what's right and wrong. I didn't want you to look at me differently." Claire's face crumpled, a mix of hurt and confusion. "I would never stop loving you," she said, but her voice wavered, betraying the conflict within her. "But it's a lot. I need time to process this." Ethan's shoulders slumped, and I could see the hope drain from him. I wanted to reach across the table, to tell him it would be okay, but Claire's reaction was a reminder of the storm we were only beginning to navigate. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor, and walked out of the room without another word. Ethan stared at his plate, his hands clenched into fists. "I knew this would happen," he muttered, his voice thick with tears. "She loves you," I said, leaning forward. "She just needs time. This doesn't change who you are to her." He looked at me, his eyes searching for something to hold on to. "What if it does?" he asked. "What if she never looks at me the same way again?" I didn't have an answer, not a good one. All I could do was sit there, the weight of his fears settling over me like a second skin. But I wasn't going anywhere. Not now, not ever. The house felt like a pressure cooker in the days that followed. Claire moved through her routines with mechanical precision. Cooking, cleaning, grading papers. But her smiles were tight, her words clipped. Ethan, meanwhile, retreated into himself, spending hours in his room or at the local coffee shop, anywhere but home. I was caught in the middle, trying to hold the pieces together while grappling with my own questions about how to be there for both of them. One evening, I found Claire in the living room, staring at a family photo from Ethan's high school graduation. His grin was wide, his arms slung around her shoulders, both of them oblivious to the storm that would come. "I don't know how to do this, Marcus," she said without looking up. "I love him, but it goes against everything I was raised to believe." I sat beside her, the couch creaking under my weight. "I know it's hard," I said, "but he's still Ethan. He's still the kid who used to beg you to read him one more bedtime story." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not that simple. My faith is who I am. And now I feel like I'm being asked to choose between God and my son." I took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "You don't have to choose," I said. "Love isn't a zero-sum game. You can love Ethan and still hold on to your beliefs. It's not about agreeing with everything he does. It's about showing up for him." She looked at me, her eyes searching for an anchor. "What if I can't? What if I say the wrong thing and lose him?" "You won't," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. "Just talk to him. Really talk. He's waiting for you." The next day, I found Ethan at the coffee shop, hunched over a laptop, his headphones drowning out the world. The place was a cozy hole in the wall, with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. I slid into the seat across from him, and he pulled off his headphones, his expression wary. "How you holding up?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He shrugged, his eyes fixed on the table. "She hasn't talked to me since dinner. I don't think she's going to." "She will," I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "She's struggling, but she loves you. She just needs to work through it." He let out a bitter laugh. "Work through what? That her son's a disappointment." "You're not a disappointment," I said firmly. "You're brave. Braver than most people I know." He looked at me, his expression softening for a moment before the walls went back up. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said. "Play the supportive stepdad. I'm not your responsibility." The words stung, but I leaned forward, refusing to let him push me away. "Maybe not. But I care about you, Ethan. And I'm not going anywhere." He didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed slightly, and that was enough for now. We sat in silence, the hum of the coffee shop filling the space between us. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn his trust, the small moments, helping with math homework, driving him to soccer practice, that had built a fragile bridge between us. Now, that bridge was being tested, and I wasn't sure if it would hold. That night, I convinced Claire to sit down with Ethan. The three of us gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly, while Claire fidgeted with a throw pillow, her eyes darting everywhere but at him. "Ethan," she began, her voice unsteady. "I'm sorry I walked away the other night. I was overwhelmed. But I want you to know I love you. That will never change." He nodded, but his expression remained guarded. "I know you love me, Mom. But do you accept me? All of me?" Claire hesitated, her lips trembling. "I'm trying," she said. "It's not easy for me. My faith teaches that certain things are wrong. But you're my son, and I want to understand. I want to be there for you." Ethan's eyes softened, but there was still a distance between them, a gap I wasn't sure could be closed in one conversation. "I don't need you to agree with me," he said. "I just need you to see me." She reached for his hand, and he let her take it, a small gesture that felt like a victory. I watched them, my heart aching with hope and fear, knowing this was only the beginning. Weeks passed, and the house settled into an uneasy truce. Claire and Ethan spoke more, their conversations cautious but earnest, like two people learning a new language. I watched from the sidelines, offering support where I could, but the real work was theirs. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was holding something back, a piece of himself he hadn't shared. One Saturday, I found him in the garage, rummaging through old boxes. The space was cluttered with relics of our blended family, Claire's old books, my tools, Ethan's childhood toys. He was holding a photo of his dad, a man I'd never met, but whose shadow loomed large. "You okay?" I asked, leaning against the workbench. He nodded, setting the photo down. "Just thinking about him. He died when I was 10. I keep wondering what he'd think of me now." I hesitated, unsure how to navigate the ghost of a man I couldn't compete with. "He'd be proud of you," I said. "For being honest. For being you." Ethan's smile was faint, tinged with sadness. "I don't know. He was like Mom, religious, traditional. I think he'd be disappointed." I stepped closer, my voice gentle. "You can't know that. And even if he would have struggled, it doesn't change who you are. You're enough, Ethan." He looked at me, his eyes searching for something I hoped I could give. "Thanks," he said quietly, "for being here. I know it's not easy, stepping into this mess." I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "Messes are my specialty. You should have seen the state of my apartment before I met your mom." He laughed, a real laugh, and for a moment, the garage felt less like a graveyard of memories and more like a space where we could build something new. That evening, Ethan came out to his friends, a group of college kids who'd been his anchor since high school. I overheard him on the phone, his voice steady but nervous, and I held my breath, waiting for their reactions. To my relief, they were supportive, their laughter and encouragement filtering through the walls. But later, when I found him in his room, he was staring at his phone, his expression troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. "One of my friends, he didn't take it well," he said. "He said he's cool with it, but I could tell he was weirded out. Like he doesn't know how to act around me now." I sighed, my heart aching for him. "Some people need time," I said, "and some won't get it. But the ones who matter? They'll stick around." He nodded, but the doubt in his eyes lingered. I wanted to fix it, to shield him from the world's judgment, but I knew I couldn't. All I could do was be there, a steady presence in a storm I couldn't control. The next day, Ethan surprised me by asking if I'd go with him to a local LGBTQ+ youth group. "I found it online," he said, his voice hesitant. "I thought maybe it'd help. But I don't want to go alone." I didn't hesitate. "Let's go," I said, grabbing my keys. The group met in a community center downtown, a colorful space filled with posters about acceptance and pride. Ethan was nervous, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. But as the meeting started, I saw him relax. The facilitator, a vibrant woman named Lila, shared her own story, and the other kids, teens and young adults from all walks of life, opened up about their struggles and triumphs. Ethan didn't speak, but he listened, his eyes bright with something I hadn't seen before, hope. On the drive home, he was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, like the kind we'd shared in the bathroom that night. "Thanks for coming," he said finally. "It means a lot." "Anytime," I said, and I meant it. I was starting to realize that being a stepfather wasn't about fixing everything. It was about showing up, again and again, no matter how messy it got. As spring turned to summer, Ethan began to find his footing. He attended the youth group regularly, and I could see the change in him, a lightness in his step, a spark in his eyes. Claire, too, was trying, reading books about faith and identity, though her progress was slower, marked by late-night conversations and tearful prayers. I was proud of them both, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still on fragile ground. One afternoon, Ethan came home with a boy named Javier, a fellow group member with a quick smile and an easy laugh. They sprawled on the living room floor, sketching designs for a pride event the group was planning. I watched from the kitchen, pretending to clean, struck by how natural Ethan looked, how free. Javier's presence seemed to anchor him, and I wondered if this was the beginning of something more. Claire noticed it too. That night, as we lay in bed, she whispered, "Do you think he's seeing that boy?" "Maybe," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Does that bother you?" She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," she admitted. "I want him to be happy, but it's still hard. I keep thinking about what my parents would say, what the church would say." I turned to her, propping myself up on one elbow. "What do you say, Claire? That's what matters." She didn't answer, but her hand found mine in the dark, and I took that as a sign of progress. The Pride event was a turning point. Ethan and Javier had worked tirelessly, designing posters and organizing a small art exhibit. Claire agreed to go, though her nerves were obvious as we parked outside the community center. The place was alive with color, rainbow flags, music, laughter, and Ethan was in the thick of it, his face lit up as he introduced us to his friends. Claire was quiet at first, her arms crossed, but as the evening wore on, I saw her soften. She listened to Lila's speech about love and acceptance, watched Ethan laugh with Javier, and by the end of the night, she was talking to other parents, her smile tentative but genuine. On the way home, she reached for Ethan's hand in the back seat. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't understand everything, but I'm trying. And I love you." Ethan's eyes shone with tears, but he smiled, squeezing her hand. "Thanks, Mom." I caught his gaze in the rearview mirror, and he mouthed a silent thank you to me. I nodded, my throat tight, knowing we'd crossed a threshold, even if the journey wasn't over. But life has a way of testing progress. A week later, Ethan came home with a black eye, his jaw tight with anger. "Some guys at school," he said, his voice low. "They found out about the Pride event. Called me names, shoved me around." Rage surged through me, hot and fierce. "Who were they?" I demanded, already reaching for my keys. "We're going to the dean." "No," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I don't want to make it worse. I needed to tell you." Claire was there in an instant, pulling him into a hug, her own tears falling. "No one gets to hurt you," she said fiercely. "No one." I watched them, my anger giving way to a fierce protectiveness. This wasn't just about Ethan's identity. It was about his safety, his right to exist without fear. I knew we couldn't shield him from everything, but I'd be damned if I didn't try. The incident at school lit a fire in Claire. She marched into the dean's office the next day, demanding action, her faith and her love for Ethan forging a new kind of strength. The boys were disciplined, but the damage was done. Ethan's confidence, so newly won, was shaken. He stopped going to the youth group, retreating back into himself, and I could see the fear creeping back into his eyes. Javier was a constant, though. He showed up at the house with takeout, coaxing Ethan into late-night conversations that spilled into laughter. I liked him, his warmth, his resilience, the way he looked at Ethan like he was the only person in the room. One evening, as they sat on the porch, I overheard Javier say, "You don't have to be okay all the time, you know. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Ethan's response was too quiet to hear, but the way he leaned into Javier told me everything I needed to know. They were falling for each other, and it was beautiful, even if it scared me a little. Not because of who they were, but because love, real love, always comes with the risk of pain. Claire noticed it too, and to my surprise, she didn't pull away. Instead, she started inviting Javier to dinner, asking about his art, his family. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, questions she didn't know how to ask, but she was trying, and Ethan saw it. One night, as we cleaned up after dinner, Claire said. I think I'm starting to understand. It's not about what I was taught. It's about him being happy, safe, loved. I pulled her into a hug, my heart swelling. You're doing great, I said. He sees it. He knows. But the world outside our home wasn't as forgiving. Ethan's college campus, progressive on paper, had its share of whispered slurs and sideways glances. He brushed it off, but I could see the toll it took. One evening, he came to me, his voice low. I'm thinking about transferring, he said. Somewhere new. Somewhere I can start over. The words hit me like a punch. I'd fought so hard to be part of his life, to build something solid, and now he was thinking of leaving. Is that what you want? I asked, keeping my voice steady. I don't know, he admitted. I want to feel like I belong somewhere. You belong here, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. With us. With Javier. You don't have to run to find that. He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for a moment, I saw the scared kid from the bathroom, the one who'd whispered his truth into the steam. I don't want to disappoint you, he said. Or Mom. You could never, I said, my voice thick. You're our family, Ethan. No matter where you go. He nodded, his expression softening, and I knew he wasn't ready to decide yet. But I also knew I'd support him, whatever he chose. That's what love does. It holds on, even when it hurts. Fall arrived, painting Seattle in shades of gold and crimson. Ethan decided to stay, at least for now, throwing himself into his art and his relationship with Javier. Claire continued her journey, attending a support group for parents of LGBTQ+ kids, her faith evolving into something more inclusive, more human. I watched them both grow, my heart full but heavy with the knowledge that this was only one chapter in a much longer story. One crisp October evening, Ethan asked us to come to an art exhibit at the community center. It was his first time showing his work publicly, and the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Claire and I arrived early, our hands clasped tightly, both nervous and excited. The room was filled with vibrant paintings, each one a piece of Ethan's heart. Bold colors, raw emotion, stories of struggle and hope. His centerpiece was a portrait of the three of us, painted from memory. In it, we stood in the bathroom, steam curling around us, our faces etched with vulnerability and love. The title read simply, Family. I felt tears prick my eyes as I realized what it meant. He'd captured that night, the moment everything changed, and turned it into something beautiful. Claire squeezed my hand, her own eyes glistening. He's incredible, she whispered. Our boy. Ethan found us, Javier at his side, both of them beaming. What do you think? He asked, his voice nervous but hopeful. It's perfect, I said, pulling him into a hug. You're perfect. Claire joined us, her arms wrapping around us both, and for a moment, the world felt right. We weren't perfect, not by a long shot. There would be more challenges, more fights, more moments of doubt. But we were together, and that was enough. Later, as we walked home under a sky full of stars, Ethan said, I was so scared that night in the bathroom. I thought I'd lose you both. You'll never lose us, Claire said, her voice fierce with love. We're in this together. He smiled, a real smile, and I felt the weight of the past months lift, just a little. We'd built something stronger than fear, something that could withstand the storms. And as we walked, side by side, I knew I'd stay, always, for the family we'd become.